The Science of Success, based out of Fundamental Beliefs Tract, page 33 to 36. Our lesson today is concerning these pages on the Fundamental Belief Tract. We found them today in our studies, and we thought that it's very, very timely to bring these out and just go over them together so that we can learn some of the inspired counsel that's given us in these specific pages. We have prayed and we ask that you do the same. And once you've done that, we can begin the study. Now, in those pages, you'll find the following. To every worker, I would say, go forth in humble faith, and the Lord will go with you. But watch unto prayer. This is the science of your labor. The power is of God. Testimonies, Volume 7, page 272. And again, we have another one from Gospel Workers, page 272 as well. And that is, I am instructed to say to my fellow workers, if you would have the riches of the treasures of heaven, you must hold secret communion with God. Unless you do this, your soul will be destitute of Holy Spirit, as were the hills of Gilboa of dew and rain. When you hurry from one thing to another, when you have so much to do that you cannot take time to talk with God, how can you expect power in your work? Commune with your own heart and then commune with God. Unless you do this, your efforts will be fruitless, made thus unsanctified hurry and confusion. Again, that's found in Gospel Workers, page 272. And then the next one we have, those who teach and preach the most effectively are those who wait humbly upon the God and watch hungrily for his guidance and his grace. Watch, pray, work. This is the Christian's watchword. The life of a true Christian is the life of constant prayer. Gospel Workers, page 257. Again, these quotes can be found in Fundamental Belief Tract, page 33 and 34. So, one of the key takeaways here is that without God in our work, we're basically going to be sounding boards. We're not going to be able to be uh, having great success, any kind of a power to reach the people. We need that prayer. We need that communication, just like it says, we must hold secret commune with God. And this is our key to understanding how that we go about our work and how we draw our strength for the work. Now, in two ways that we know of, we can commune with God, and that is prayer and supping. Now, many of us are well familiar with prayer, but not so much supping. If we read in Revelation 3:20, it says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me." So this is one of our communication avenues that we have, and that is called supping. Now, supping is different than prayer. Prayer is more of a formal kneeling and talking to God and request and basically communing with God through prayer. Supping is a direct communication back and forth in your mind to God. In other words, you're questioning things, you're receiving answers, you're thinking along the scriptures or along any type of the message, and you're wondering out these aloud in your mind, and then you're receiving. The key is receiving, because the Lord says, "I will come into him and do what? He will sup with you." So, in other words, He wants to picture like you're at the dinner table. Okay. What happens when you have a family together at the dinner table? Well, you're having your supper, and at that time, many good conversations happen. Many family matters are discussed. Many counsel is giving from parents to the children and so forth. A lot of good communication comes at the supper time table. Well, this is what it's meant to sup with him. We're having the same type of mental communication, and we might be driving, we might be taking a walk, we might be laying in bed just resting. All these different things can enable us to sup with him and communicate back and forth, receive ideas, answers, so forth. And to do proper supping, we really do need peace and quiet. And of course, you got the radio blasting, you got TV going. Don't be expecting much of a sup with the Lord, okay? Because you've got distractions. And so you need to settle down, be in a quiet place, and then you can clearly start supping. I know this is from personal experience. Before I became a Seventh day Adventist, I had an idol, and that idol was the radio, was with the stereo, the records, the CDs, the cassette tapes, all these music songs were my idols. And when I would drive, I'd have to listen to that. That was part of my my heathen worship, you might want to call it, of worshiping idols, worshiping music. And so I didn't have any peace and quiet time much because I was so enthralled with noise and music and distraction. But once we become a true Christian follower, this quiet time becomes very important to us and it allows us to sup with Him. And so, again, prayer and supping is very key to our work in the vineyard today. So we'll continue on with the fundamental track. When men are as devoted as Elijah was and possess the faith that he had, God will reveal Himself as He did then. When men plead with the Lord, as did Jacob, the results that we're seeing then will again be seen. Power will come from God in answer to the prayer of faith. Gospel Workers, page 255. Rouse to work, present truth teachers. Do the works of Him who has sent you while it is day, for the night hasteth when no man can work. John 9:4. And whatsoever is right, that shall you receive, if you faithfully teach that only which should be taught. The Bible and the books of spirit prophecy being the sole source of the shepherd's rod message. Therefore, when the rod is taught, the Bible and the spirit prophecy are taught. And since none but the Spirit of truth, who transmitted the mysteries of inspiration, can interpret them, then those who attempt to teach them without this inspired uh, inter sorry, brethren, I can't say that word, but you can see it. Authority inevitably fall into the forbidden practice of private interpretation. 2 Peter 1:20. The great evil which has brought Christendom to its present almost boundless state of schism and consequent confusion, strife, and impotency. Again, it's found in Fundamental Beliefs track page 35. So, how can we only teach that which should be taught? Well, we know as present truth believers that Zechariah 4 is the way that the Lord delegates this truth to be brought to us. And of course, we see a original track from Brother Hoddif's day showing one of the original charts on page 18 of track 6. And again, we notice that we'll take our arrow. We notice that this is a beautiful pictorial representation of Zechariah 4, and it has much that we can learn from. And of course, we'll go over that in a few minutes here about where to find the actual information concerning this symbolism. And while we have it out here, we just once again we went over this point on this channel and our other YouTube channel, showing that there's indeed 7 tubes. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then under this big left pipe here, you have 2 tubes, 5 and 6. If you look closely there, that is very obvious. And then you have this tube, which is 7. So you have a total of 7 tubes here coming out and getting the oil from the golden bowl and taking it down to the church, which is representative of the 7 candlesticks. So again, on learning the lesson of Zechariah 4, it keeps us in the correct teaching mode that the Lord intended us to have. And In TG1, number 14, page 17, we read, "And the angel that talked with me again and waked me, as a man that is waketh out of his sleep, said unto me, What seest thou? And I said, I have looked, and behold, a candlestick all of gold, with a bowl upon the top of it, and has 7 lamps thereon, and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps, which are upon the top thereof, and 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other upon the left side thereof. So I answered and spake to the angel that talked with me, saying, What are these, my Lord? The illustration here exhibited, and of course that was the prior um, pictorial representation, you note is an exact reproduction of Zechariah's symbolism. In order that our study be simplified and vivid, we shall study the chapter along with the illustration. Now, to find the full understanding of Zechariah 4 and how we should teach properly, that is explained in 1TG number 14, Shepherd's Rod Volume 2, page 283 to 289, and Track 6, page 17 to 25. So if you can take the time to thoroughly get this lesson in your mind, you'll be very much benefited from the proper procedure on how to teach the truth, how to teach the lesson to the people. Okay, let's continue with our Facebook track, page 36. As we dare not follow in such a path, we must therefore, as teachers of the Shepherd's Rod, the official publications of the Davidian SDA Association, teach only in the light of the rod those passages which in one way or another need to be interpreted. Thus only will all present truth believers ever become of the same mind, seeing eye to eye and speaking the same things. 1 Corinthians 1, verse 10, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, and Isaiah 52, verse 8. And such as do choose to engage in private interpretation are respectfully asked to desist from teaching in the name of the rod and at its expense. Like them, or let them, like honest men, teach in their own names and at their own expense. Finally, brethren, keep the office posted as to your endeavors, and it shall in turn render every possible support to make your works a success. Now, God speed you. And that was the final part of the fundamental track, page 36. So let's look at some of this that we are counseled to only teach um, passages from the rod that need to be interpreted. And if we do decide to preach private ideas, we shouldn't do it in the name of the rod. And we should do it at our own expense. So let's now look at some of those private teachings that are among us today. Okay, some examples of some private interpreters' ideas today. Number 1, 2 Ezekiel 9s to come to God's people. First one among Davidians, then later to the SDA Church. And of course, many of us are well familiar with this false teaching that comes from Lennox Sam, and he has his own association, and he calls himself the Davidian Church Association. So he's actually proclaiming that we should get out of the SDA Church and have our own Davidian Church, which we know as present truth believers is totally against what the message tells us. Number 2, take God's tithes and keep them for your own good work. Of course, we can find that from Eric Edstrom. He also has the website UPA 7, and he's very active with the Universal Publishing Association on YouTube. Now, of course, you know, many of us are very well of his longtime work of lambasting Waco and Mountaindale as abomination associations, and he gives several reasons, but it's one of those things where the teacher needs to be taught before he can teach. And of course, you know, the big error coming from UPA 7 is that there's so much abominations in all the associations today, except for UPA 7, that you can order the message through one of UPA's sites to produce your own tracks, your own message, and then you can make your home the storehouse by going out and producing all this material to your local area. And then, of course, they teach that because you do that, you're entitled to have tithes. And we find this is an abomination. And so this is something you have to be aware of because it's very, very sneaky. This kind of teaching has the cover of righteousness, but it is completely naked. Okay, let's go on number 3. More prophets to come to the SDA church after Victor Houteff. And that's one of the leading proponents is the Branch Davidians and Trent Wild. Of course, he has a lot of YouTube videos. And so the Branch Davidians have taught this for many years that uh, after Victor Houteff died, Ben Roden came on the scene, and he was another prophet after Victor Houteff. So, in other words, in Malachi 4:5, where the Lord promises he will send Elijah the prophet before the great and dreadful day, well, the branch cross out Elijah and they cross out the word prophet. And in turn, they insert Elijah's and prophets. In other words, the word of the Lord isn't good enough. The Lord made a mistake. So the branch is correcting the Lord and says, no, there's not just one Elijah. There's several other prophets, other ones after Elijah as well. And so this is a true abomination that we have to be aware of. Number 4, more than 144,000 sealed from all the tribes of Israel. Of course, that's mentioned in Revelation 7, verse 4-8, where the Lord carefully, meticulously goes over how many are going to be sealed from the tribes, all the tribes of the house of Israel. And we know that Israel is mentioned as the church in the last days. So from the church, the Lord mentions 144,000 sealed. And those are who escape. We know this is foundational in our Shepherd Rod message. But the Bashan Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association, along with Salem, teach that that's not true, that there actually is going to be more than 144,000 sealed from the SDA church, which we find is terrible because that's going against Revelation's warning that those that add to the words will be eternally damnation, will find eternal damnation. So we have to be very careful, brethren, to stay within the golden bowl. If we stay within the golden bowl, we're going to be safe. So this concludes our message today. We hope you've got some light from this presentation and just want to stay on the straight and narrow, the middle way of the path. Stay in the middle. And you go off to these outskirts and you're walking in dangerous territory. So let's keep this in mind. And until next time, God bless you and continue to guide you into all truth. John 16:13.